Mr. BroviCast, Mr. BroviCast.
Hey, it's the Mr. BroviCast, Mr. BroviCast. That is Mr. BroviCast. Or whatever intro you want to go with that plays in your own head. And it's Thursday, February 28th, the last day of 7th grade February ever. Except next month is like, the beginning of the first March ever of 7th grade. Yeah. Anyway, we see Turn In Your Camp Tecumseh stuff. And then we see Book Report Kids have been torturing all of them. Random door opening because of creepy ghosts. And then, let's see, get to stories. Alright.
It's Bobby Stephen.
Quick review of the things we did before so we can finish our story, then get into our fun story today, what we do with ugly children. Let's see, music and museum comes from which gods?
The Muses.
How many were there?
8, 9.
9. What was their job?
To possess people
To inspire. Because what were people made out of?
Animated clay.
There you go. You can be made out of stupidity. I mean, you could. I've seen some students. But made out of clay and animated mud, sprinkly dust on top. Which means music is not sound created by humans, but sound created by
the gods.
The Muses. A museum is a collection of art not made by humans, but made by the Muses. And so all connects back to them. June comes from what god? Hera, whose Roman name was?
Juno.
She was the god of two things.
Childbirth and marriage.
Why is it ironic she's the god of marriage?
She's bad at marriage.
I mean, she wasn't bad at marriage. She just had she was good at marriage. She was just married to a person who was bad at marriage. But she had a bad marriage. And then why is it ironic to be the god of child?
She kills babies.
Or at least hunt them down and try.
Her husband was too friendly, so she had to kill the
I
friendly.
mean, I'm not too friendly, but he's definitely very friendly.
What?
And then, sorry, I like to stir trouble.
I am not
like
in
a
jail.
pot. And then we'll go with, why is June named after her?
Because it's her wedding song.
Her baby, her marriage month.
There's a slight difference between the two. That is the most popular marriage month because you don't have the wetness, you don't have the sweatiness, and so it's right there in the middle. And then we got to mind. What god does mind come from? Athena. What was her Roman name? Nicely done. Did we get to why it says palace in front of her name?
No.
I skipped that. I apologize. So the reason why, and it doesn't say like over here behind Reda Tatowski where it says Athena, there's no palace over there. On this one where it has Athena, there's no palace in front of her name. Pallas Athena is in later Greek mythology. And what happens there is she has a friend of hers named, that's plastic recycling, I'll go into the plastic one, is that she has a friend of hers named Pallas, who is a dude who fights next to her through all these big wars, but he's a human, and he was really super impressive. And so one day in this big battle, he gets killed, and she's all upset. She's like, no, you can't die. And he's like, there's a sword through me. She's like, I guess you can die. And so because of that, she decides to take his name to honor him. And she goes, from now on, my name will be Pallas Athena. And that is her way of trying to honor and give respect to her best friend who died. That's the Pallas Athena part. But back to this one. So we got to Athena. And what is Athena the god of?
War. Wisdom.
And who's the other god of war?
Ares.
We'll talk more about him in a moment too. And who is Athena's father?
Zeus.
And so we got to the story of starting with Zeus. And who is Zeus married to?
Hera.
Hera. Did we get to his girlfriend?
Yeah.
Do you remember her name?
Matik.
Once again, ironic you don't remember because her name was Mincynine and she was the god of
Memories.
Well, that you remember. Well done. So Mincynine, also known as the side chick. And see, then she brings good news to Zeus after they've been dating. And what's her good news? That she's pregnant. Not good news. Why is that not good news for Zeus?
Because Hera's like us.
Evidence in the marriage. Why can he not just stab the baby?
Because it won't, because it's God.
Nice. Not because it's immoral. He has no problem with baby stabbing. You do it all day. Like, it's a hobby. But because you just have a baby on a stick. Don't we all? And why can he not just stab Mincynine?
Because she's a goddess.
Once again, then you have angry girlfriend on a stick. And once again, that solves no problems whatsoever. So he comes up with a plan. Where does he take her? No, he does not. Not
deep
yet.
dark part of the
In the
forest.
deep dark part of the forest on a picnic. And then they play a game. What is their game?
Who can go smallest?
Who can turn into the smallest thing. And then eventually he tricks her into turning into a...
Gnat.
And what does he do?
Eat her.
Yoink. Is that where we left off with you?
No, he had a headache. And then he had a headache.
Oh, so we did get further. So yoink, yoink, eating. And then from there we get to go a little bit further. We have the fact that now, years later, he gets away scot-free. Best murder ever. He's like, oh, one murder down, 1,000 more to go. And then we have him wandering around Mount Olympus. that's when the headache comes in, and he's stumbling around all upset. And did we get anyone helping him yet?
No.
All right. So stumbling around Mount Olympus, super upset, is basically for him feels like there's a person sitting on his head, smashing his front of his head with a hammer. He's like, it's the worst I've ever felt. So he goes and talks to their gods. He's like, I need help. He's like, someone bring me aspirin. And they're like, we've not invented that yet. He's like, ah! So he invents the table flip. He's like, ah! Flip, and flips over a table. And so eventually, as he's walking around screaming on Mount Olympus, one of the other gods goes, hey, Bobby, the god of socks. And he goes, hey, we
Helpful.
have not invented aspirin yet, but your son Hephaestus has come up with a way of fixing headaches, but it's a little on the experimental side. And Zeus is like, I don't care, I'll take anything. He's like, where's Hephaestus? Like, well, he's down in his mountain right now. So Zeus goes down to Hephaestus' mountain, walks, and he's like, Hephaestus. He's like, I've got this horrible headache going on. Rumor is you have a way of solving them, some new solution, but it's a little experimental. And Hephaestus goes, yeah, experimental's a word for it. And Zeus is like, I don't care. What is it? So Hephaestus goes,
Don't whack me,
and he
please.
pulls out a giant axe. And he goes, I call it an axe. And Zeus is like, ooh, how does it work?
No.
And Hephaestus goes, well, you come over here to this chair, and then you want to lean as far over the chair as you can, so your head's hanging over. And Zeus goes, uh-huh. And Hephaestus goes, I'm going to step back over here, get some good distance, and I run up, and I whack it into the top of your head as hard as I can, and then I wiggle it back and forth, rip it out of your head, and I reach inside, and I pull out what is ever giving you a headache. And Zeus goes, that's genius, okay! And he's like, Hephaestus goes, okay. He's like, well, you just lean over your head as far as you can. He's like, this might hurt you more than me. And Zeus goes, what? And he goes, nothing. And he goes,
No.
whack! Right in the top of Zeus's head. He's like, wiggle, 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 wiggle. Pulls out the top of his head. Then, as Zeus stands up, he's like, can you see anything inside of me? And he goes over and he starts poking around in Zeus's brain. He's like, pokey, pokey. And he pokes off like Zeus's leg shoots out the side. And he's like, wrong part of the brain. And then Hephaestus steps back screaming. He's like, ee! And when he does, out of Zeus's brain jumps a little person, like an action figure. A little Lululemon. No, the little dolls. My daughters play them all the time. La Loopsy, not Lulu.
Oh.
Lulu's the store. La Loopsy pops out of his brain onto the ground in front of him. They both freak out like, oh my goodness, that's a brain baby. And he's just like, quick, step on it. He's like, and his head closes back together. Before they get a chance to step on the brain baby grows up to full size. Like those little shrinky dinks you get as a kid, you drop them in water, like it grows like into a dinosaur. Like, it's so good. It's just a sponge. It's the same thing. And she goes, and it grows up to full size. This person jumping out of Zeus's head is Athena in full battle armor, sword and shield and armor on top of her, and she lands in front of him. And it turns out, while she was inside of Zeus, her mom, Mycenae, had given birth, and then Athena had spent all of her formative years floating around through Zeus' system until she got to his brain. When she got to his brain, she built a forge so she could make her own armor, as women do. And then while she was there, she went ahead and made her own armor, and that was what gave Zeus the headache. So when she got freed, she came out.
Where's Mycenae?
Mycenae is never heard from again because logic. And so now Athena is free, and Zeus is super excited. He's like, that's my first brain baby. He's like, I gave birth. I'm a mommy daddy. So Zeus decides that she gets to become one of the Olympians and gives her a throne. Because she was born from his head, she becomes the god of...
We're wrong.
And because she was making armor, she becomes a god of...
War.
So that's why she's both the god of wisdom and war,
Got it.
being born from his brain.
Got it.
So that's
is the
our
forge
story.
still in his head, or did they get rid of that?
The four logic. And so a mind is just your thinker bit that goes along with it.
You're a thinker.
Your thinker. I mean, it's not technically your brain. It's more like the thinky bits. March, our last one before we get to
Is
our
it
fun
Aries?
story about ugly babies. Why would you say Aries?
Because he marches into battle.
Why does he march into battle?
Because he's a war god.
Because Mars
I
is from a
mean,
name.
your thinking is skewed, but the answer is correct.
Oh yeah.
A frightening journey to go along. But yes, we get it from Ares.
I
who's
did it.
Wait, what's his Roman name?
Mars.
Why does that matter?
Mars.
Wait.
Because that's where you get the word March from, his
No.
Roman name of Mars.
That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't matter, it's true. And so him being the other god of war that we talked about, the one that's right over here, god of war dude. God of war dude. God of war dude there.
Why?
There are two different definitions for what marching is. The first definition,
March into battle.
marching into
Oh,
battle.
ooh.
It was originally just called a war walk. When you were going off to battle, you were doing the Mars walk, or you were honoring Mars. So when you saw all these warriors going off to fight, you would say the fact that they were honoring the god of war, Mars, so they were marching. And hence, that's where the marching comes in. The other definition is the third month of the year, March, the one that's coming up tomorrow. Also connected to him, because March, this time of year, was when you have weather that is so chaotic, where it goes from freezing cold to 80 degrees in shorts, back to a snow day, back to winds knocking down trees, back to a calm day in flowers. And the Greeks are like, what is going on? So they thought this time of year, the gods always got into fights with each other. And obviously it was them getting into fights that caused all the crazy weather down on Earth.
Yes.
So I know, now you're like, well, it does make so much sense now. And so this time of year was called the time of Mars. Eventually just became known as March. So you went from the time of Mars to the time of June. So those were our two definitions there. Now to the rest of the blue sheet, and let's get into our stories. Beginning of Greek mythology, our stories. Now that we've done our intro-y stuff, in the beginning, you already know the first thing. We already touched on this.
Chaos.
Chaos. What was chaos?
A giant swirl.
And once again, I could find a picture of pudding. I couldn't find a big thing of swirling pudding, because apparently it keeps going onto the ground. So just use your imagination, or just look at it and go like that, and it's sort of like swirling pudding is the same idea. Swirl. You're also special. Mr. Broviak, it is swirling. Now my brain hurts. And so we have the big ball of swirling pudding, and eventually it was, existed for, I don't know how pudding tells time. It existed for 4 puddings, until eventually it split to form the very first 2 creatures to exist. And the first 2 gods to exist were?
Kronos and Rhea.
No.
Gaia and Uranus.
Nicely done. Way to go, 7th grade on that. It split like a little amoeba to form the first 2 beings, which were Gaia and Uranus. Now, of course, once again, how do you guys pronounce Gaia?
Gaia.
And instead of Uranus is?
Uranus.
So proud. Now, Gaia is also known by the name Mother Earth, and then Uranus is known as not time, but Father Sky. And they were literally the earth and the sky. Mother Earth, or Gaia, was both a god you could talk to. Hi, how are you? You're standing on it. Okay. And it was also an actual place. Father Sky was the sky and a god you could communicate and have conversations with. So these were the very first 2 to exist. And they were around for thousands of years. Just the 2 of them hanging out doing Mother Earth, Father Sky things. Until one day, Mother Earth has a conversation with Father Sky. And she goes, honey bunches. And he's like, yes, dear. She goes, you know how you're called Father Sky and I'm called Mother Earth? And he goes, yes. She goes, I don't think those names fit us. And he goes, why? She goes, well, I don't think we can be a mother and father unless we have children. And he goes, that's a good point. What are children? She goes, I have no idea. But I think we should have some. He goes, I think that's a good idea. He goes, how do we do that? She goes, I don't know. I've not taken that class yet because that'd be awkward. They go, how about we just stare at each other? And they go, that makes for the story much better and less creepy. So they decide to just stare at each other until the first children are born. So Mother Earth and Father Sky just go, and out pop the first babies. These first children they have, there are 3 of them, and all 3 of them are brothers because we've not yet invented women. But you just said it's mother. I know, stop trying to use logic. So we have the first 3 brothers that are born. They are humongous. They are going to be the largest creatures to ever exist. And they have a couple different names. Officially, they are called the Hekatonashires, which in Greek literally means 100-handed.
Oh,
Usually, I'm going to refer to them as the 100-handed monsters, or probably the 50-headed monsters, because they had 100 hands and 50 heads.
Whoa.
In Greek, Hekaton meant 100. Shire just means hand. And so this is an actual photograph of them at the time. They had cameras back then, so it worked out well. And so this is roughly what they looked like, given the photographic evidence they had at the time. Is they had the 50 heads, 100 hands. They were also horrifyingly ugly. They are going to be the biggest creatures to ever exist and the ugliest creatures to ever exist. They did have names. You don't have to know them. I put them up there only because kids ask all the time, did they have names? They did. It was Cultus, Gyges, and Briareus. And so that's just in case you really want to insult like a younger sibling. You can like, you're such a Gyges. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's a pretty sea creature. Like, oh, thank you. Like, the big ugly monster. And so it just gives it extra. So the three of them exist. Mother Earth, as soon as she sees them, is overwhelmed with love. She's like, they're so beautiful, and I love them so much. And she gives them a little gitchy goose. Gitchy, gitchy, gitchy goose. On their little chins, like, giggle, 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 and they have a great time. Father Sky takes one look at them and goes like, hey, look at, blah, and he throws up everywhere. He's like, no. And he says, I cannot even look at these things. They are so horrifying. But Mother Earth loves them, and he wants to make Mother Earth happy. She goes, how about I just never look at them, and I'll just look this direction forever, ever. And she's like, that sounds good to me. And the big ugly monsters go, black, 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 because that's all they can say. He's like, I think that's a yes. And things work out well for a few years. The monsters would play with each other. They'd pick up giant mountains like, black, black, catch, when they throw mountains at each other. The problem was they tended to make noise. And when they throw a mountain at each other, and it'd land like, boom, and everything would shake, Father Sky was like, what was that? God, he'd throw up again. And he eventually gets tired of looking at his children and throwing up. You know how ugly babies are. Plus, he can never look at his wife. So Father Sky decides to solve this problem. He goes, you know what? I can't have a bunch of uggo babies running around, so we're just going to make them disappear. So he takes out his hand one day, rips up a huge hole in Mother Earth. This hole is later going to be called Tartarus. 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 If you ever watched SpongeBob, whenever he gets mad, he goes, tartar sauce. It's the same thing. It's just tartar-us. And he rips up this huge hole in the ground and then reaches down and goes to each one of his three sons. He goes, doink, 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 and pushes them into the hole and puts it back on top, making them disappear forever, getting rid of all three of them. And he goes, you know what? We're never going to speak about that again, and gets rid of all three children. Mother Earth, incredibly upset. She's like, but I love my uggo babies. He was like, yeah, they were adorable until I looked at them and threw up everything. She's like, you don't even have a stomach. He's like, that's how ugly they were. Years go by, till one day, Mother Earth has a conversation with Father Sky. And she goes, honey. He goes, yes. She goes, remember those children thing we had? He's like, yeah. She goes, I think we should try again. He's like, I don't think so. He's like, that last one was a failure. She's like, I know. That was the experimental group. But now we're going to try a second time, and things are going to go much better. He goes, all right. But if they're as ugly as the first ones, I'm getting rid of them. She's like, no. Practice makes perfect. He's like, all right, I'll agree to that. So they decide to have a second set of children. He goes, have you taken the class yet? She's like, I haven't. Have you? He's like, no. It's like just staring at each other awkwardly. It's like staring at each other awkwardly. It's like a 7th grade dance. And so they decide to just stare at each other awkwardly. And they just go, and out pop the third set of babies. Second set. There's 3 of them. Second set of babies. There's also 3 of them. Also males. Women have still not been invented yet. These ones that pop up are much smaller. Compared to the big ugly monsters, only come up to about their kneecaps in size. And only have 2 arms, and 1 head, and 1 mouth, and 1 nose, and 1 eyeball right in the middle of their head. Because they are called
Cyclops.
And this is where the Cyclops come in. Luckily, we have photographic evidence of them also. And these are the
they're so much
Cyclops.
cuter.
Right there, adorable. And compared to the big ugly monsters, they were much more, I'm not sure I'd use the word attractive, but much more non-pukifying. And they also had names, Arges, Brontes, and Steropes. Mother Earth immediately was like, oh my god, they're so adorable. I love them. Father Sky has his hands over his eyes. He's like, I'm not going to look yet. He's like, you said the last ones were adorable. But eventually gives a little peek, and he's like, oh. I don't feel like throwing up at all. He was like, I like these children. He decides, he goes, hey, you know what? We're going to keep these. And the Cyclops go, what do you mean keep us? He's like, don't worry about it. And so he decides to keep this set of children around. And things go well. These 3 run around on Earth, things going great. And they even discover they have a special power that no other creature will ever have, which is the ability to be natural metalsmiths. They don't even have to use forges. They can take their hands, plunge them deep into the ground, pull out big hunks of metal and shape them with their bare hands. And that's what they do. But imagine we have 3 brothers who are immortal and cannot die and have the natural ability to shape metal into weapons. What are they going to spend their time doing?
Fighting.
You must know boys also. So that's immediately they're like, oh, squishy, 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 look, it's a sword. If only I had a thing to... Hey. And they immediately start stabbing each other because that's what boys do, because they have issues. And this entertains Father Sky. He's like, oh, this is great. Watch them stabbing each other. And they run around and like chop each other's arms off like, oh my God, ah! And things go well. Till one day, they're running around, and one of them is chasing after the other brother and gets up to the top of a mountain, and he figures he's going to jump off the top of the mountain, and he's going to chop his brother in half and surprise him, because it's always a classic trick. And he jumps up to the top of the mountain, he's like, I'm going to get you! And when he jumps up and swings, it goes creak across the thing above him. And what's the thing above him?
His dad.
Father Sky. And Father Sky's like, ah! He's like, who just caught me with a sword? And the 3 brothers are like, oh, they all point to the other one, like, that one, and they point to each other. Father Sky goes, listen, it's all fun and games when you're stabbing each other, but as soon as you stab Daddy, Daddy gets upset. He's like, no more stabbing your father. They're like, okay, Daddy, no more stabbing you. He's like, thank you. And things continue well. Till one day, the 3 brothers are out playing again, and one of them shapes a little spear and starts running after his brother. He's like, I'm going to get you! When he gets close to his brother, throws the spear as hard as he can, and his brother sees it coming and then dodges it and goes all Matrix. Zing, goes right above the top of him, and the spear just keeps on going, and going, and going, and hits Father Sky. Wink! And Father Sky's like, ugh. Who stabbed me? Oh. We will pick up with our stories again, but not till Tuesday. Because what happens tomorrow? Speeches. Monday, 9-week assessment. Yeah. Tuesday, stories about stabbing your father.